Stay right here. Don't move.
Baby, stay right here. You hear me? Do not move. Tiana said it the way all mothers say impossible things, gently, with a terror underneath. She set Ava down on the bench outside the service corridor of the Duhyun estate. Third floor, west wing, the wing no one on staff was supposed to be near. I'll be 3 minutes, she whispered, smoothing the collar of Ava's red dress. 3 minutes, Ava. Don't touch anything. Ava blinked at her, nodded once, solemnly, the way 3-year-olds do when they have absolutely no intention of listening. Her little sneakers blinked pink and blue against the dark hardwood floor. Tiana turned away. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. That was all it took. When she came back, the bench was empty. For a full second, Tiana did not breathe. The corridor stretched ahead of her, silent, expensive, the kind of quiet that only money could buy. Darkwood paneling, art that probably had its own insurance policy. The soft hum of a climate system calibrated for comfort she would never afford. The animal crackers were still on the bench. The sippy cup, untouched. Which meant Ava hadn't left because she was hungry. She'd left because something had caught her eye. And that was so much worse. For days. That was how long Tiana had been working in this house. For days of keeping her head down, her uniform pressed, her face a blank professional surface that gave nothing away. For days of pretending she was just the new housekeeper, not a woman who had once built something real, only to watch someone else take it and put their name on it. For days of holding it together. Ava. Her voice came out low, controlled. The panic was there. She just couldn't afford to let it show. Not here. Ava, baby, where are you? Nothing. Only the settled silence of a place that had never once had a 3-year-old in a blinking red dress running loose through it. She moved fast. Quietly, quickly. Supply closet empty. Staff bathroom empty. The long corridor lined with ceramics worth more than her car, her rent, her last 3 years combined. Empty. 7 minutes. 8. 9. Then she saw it. A small red shoe. Sitting just outside a pair of double doors at the end of the private hall. Slightly open. On the wall beside them, a polished placard. Private study, L. Diohyun. Tiana knew that name. Everyone on staff knew that name. They said it the way people say the names of weather systems. Not as a person, as a forecast. Lee Do-hyun. The CEO. The heir. The man the other housekeepers whispered about in the break room with their voices dropped low. He doesn't give second chances. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't have to. Just don't be the one who makes him notice you. And now her daughter, her 3-year-old, in one sneaker, in a red dress, was on the other side of those doors. Tiana pressed her hand flat against the door, pushed it open, and froze. Because the most feared man in the building was asleep in his leather chair. And Ava was curled against his chest, one tiny fist gripping the lapel of his jacket, breathing the slow, boneless breath of a child who had decided, without asking anyone's permission, that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. She should have grabbed Ava and run. That was the smart thing. The only sensible thing. Pick up your child, back out slowly, pretend none of this ever happened, and spend the rest of the night figuring out how to resign before anyone checked the cameras. But Tiana couldn't move. Because Lee Do-hyun, the man whose name alone made grown executives straighten their ties, was sitting in a leather chair the size of a small country, head tipped back, completely, deeply, helplessly asleep. And Ava was on his chest. Just on him. Like he was a sofa. Like she had assessed the situation, found the most comfortable surface in the room, and claimed it. Her tiny red dress was bunched up at the sides. One shoe was missing. The blinking one, still flashing quietly on the floor somewhere behind Tiana. Ava's cheek was pressed flat against his chest, her mouth slightly open, her breathing slow and even. He had one hand on her back. Not holding her. Not gripping. Just resting there. Like his body had done it on its own, and the rest of him hadn't caught up yet. Tiana pressed her hand harder over her mouth. The office was enormous and dark except for the lamp on the desk, still glowing gold over a stack of open folders. A half-empty glass of water. A pen lying uncapped on a contract she definitely wasn't supposed to be reading. Everything in this room cost more than she made in a year, including, probably, the chair her daughter had decided to use as a bed. Move, Tiana. Move right now. She took one step forward, then stopped. Because Do-hyun shifted, just slightly, and his hand on Ava's back pressed a little firmer. Like even in sleep, some part of him was paying attention. Ava didn't stir. She just exhaled, soft and content, and tucked herself closer. Tiana stood there in the doorway of the most powerful man in Seoul's private office, in her cleaning uniform, holding a cart that squeaked when she breathed wrong, watching her 3-year-old sleep peacefully on a billionaire like he was a park bench. She didn't know what to feel first. Terror. Relief. Something else she didn't have a name for yet. Then Do-hyun's eyes opened. Slowly, like a man surfacing from very deep water. He blinked once at the ceiling. Then his gaze dropped to the small person on his chest. Then, unhurried, all the way across the room. To Tiana. He didn't speak. Didn't move. Didn't reach for the phone that would end her entire life in one call. He just looked at her. And for the first time in 6 days, someone in this building actually saw her. He didn't fire her. That was the first surprise. The second was that when Tiana finally crossed the room on legs she couldn't feel anymore and whispered, "I'm so sorry." She wandered in. "It won't happen again." Do-hyun just looked down at Ava, still warm and half asleep against his chest, and said nothing. Not one word. He set Ava down on the chair like she was made of something fragile, stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked out of his own office without looking back. Like it hadn't happened. Like none of it had happened. Tiana told herself that was a good thing. She was wrong. Because the next morning, her supervisor pulled her aside and said, very quietly, very carefully, that Mr. Lee had requested the same cleaning team return to the West Wing. Specifically, by name. Tiana's name. She spent the whole morning trying not to think about what that meant. She was still thinking about it when Ava, who was supposed to be sitting quietly in the corner with her juice box and her crayons, stood up, turned around, and walked directly into Lee Do-hyun, who had just stepped silently into the room. Tiana saw it happen in real time and could not stop it. The juice box crumpled on impact. A wide, spectacular arc of orange liquid left the straw and landed, every single drop, on the front of a shirt so wide it almost had its own light source. Silence. The kind that has weight. Ava looked up at him, blinked once, then held out what was left of the juice box like she was offering him a gift. Tiana was already moving, cloth in hand, apology fully formed, heart somewhere near the floor. "I'm so sorry. Please, I'll pay for it, whatever it costs I'll." She stopped, because Do-hyun was looking at Ava, not at the shirt, not at Tiana, at Ava, who was still holding the juice box out, perfectly serious, waiting for him to take it. Something moved across his face. Fast. Gone almost before it arrived. He crouched down to her level. This man who shut down companies before lunch. Crouched down. Does it taste good? Ava considered this with the gravity of a UN negotiator. It's mango. It's the best one. I'll keep that in mind. He stood up, looked at Tiana. Just once, just briefly, the way you look at something you're trying not to look at, and walked back out. The shirt was ruined. Tiana would later find out it cost $4,000. He never mentioned it. Not once. Not ever. Nobody used the East Garden. That was what the other staff said when Tiana asked about it. Too far from the main house. Too overgrown. Mr. Lee hadn't been out there in years, maybe longer. There was an old swing set near the back wall, rusted at the joints, the kind that had clearly belonged to a child a long time ago and had been quietly forgotten ever since. Tiana hadn't thought much of it. Until the morning she walked past the garden gate and stopped. The swing set was clean. Not painted. Not new. Just clean. Wiped down, bolts tightened, the chains oiled so they hung straight instead of crooked. Someone had set a small wooden board across the base of it, flat enough for a toddler to stand on without slipping. Tiana looked at it for a long time. Then she looked around the garden. Empty. Just the morning light and the sound of birds and a little stone path she hadn't noticed before, swept clear of leaves. She didn't say anything to anyone. But the next day she brought Ava out there. And Ava, who had opinions about everything, who rejected most things on principle, walked straight to that swing like she'd been waiting for it her whole life, climbed on, and looked at Tiana like, well, push me. That was a Tuesday. By Thursday there was a note. Small. Folded once. Left on top of the wooden board where Ava always stood to climb on. Tiana almost missed it. She unfolded it. Inside, in handwriting that was very precise and slightly too formal for the subject matter, was a single drawing. A beetle, carefully sketched, labeled in small neat letters, Prosopocoilus inclinatus. Lives under old wood. Harmless. Has excellent taste in gardens. Tiana read it twice. Then she looked up at the main house. At the high windows. At the one on the top floor where the curtain was. Maybe, just slightly not where it had been before. She folded the note back up. Didn't mention it. Didn't react. Just tucked it into her pocket and pushed Ava on the swing until her daughter was laughing so hard she could barely hold on. The next morning there was another note. A different beetle. Same neat handwriting. This one said, found near the roses. Probably judging everyone. Ava demanded Tiana read it aloud 4 times. Then she carried it around for the rest of the day like it was something precious. Tiana told herself it was nothing. Just a man being kind to a child. She almost believed it. She heard the heels first. That specific kind of click. Unhurried. Deliberate. The walk of someone who had never once in their life been asked to use the service entrance. Tiana was in the east corridor, cart beside her, head down, doing what she always did, being invisible. She didn't look up when the front doors opened. Didn't look up when the staff straightened around her like a current had passed through them. She looked up when she heard the laugh. And the cloth in her hand dropped. She knew that laugh. She had spent 3 years trying to forget it. Soo-yeon Choi. She was exactly the same. That was the cruelest part. Same sharp cheekbones, same practiced smile, same way of moving through a room like she had personally designed it. She was wearing ivory. Of course she was. And she had 2 assistants behind her and a look on her face like she had already decided how everything was going to go. She didn't see Tiana. Why would she? Tiana was staff. Tiana was furniture. Tiana was the woman she had already used up and left behind. Tiana picked the cloth back up, kept her face still, kept her hands moving. She heard fragments as they passed. The assistant murmuring something about the schedule, Soo-yeon asking which room had been prepared, a name that made Tiana's stomach drop all the way to the floor. Do-hyun's name. Marriage negotiations. That was the phrase. Said lightly, like it was nothing. Like it was just another item on a calendar. Tiana stared at the wall in front of her and breathed. In. Out. Slow. She had built something once, a real thing. A startup, 2 years of her life poured into code and pitch decks and late nights fueled by nothing but ambition and bad coffee. And Soo-yeon had smiled at her across a boardroom table and called her brilliant, and then spent the next 6 months quietly, methodically, legally stealing every single piece of it. By the time Tiana understood what was happening, it was already over. No job, no patent, no proof that any of it had ever been hers. Just Ava, and a cleaning uniform, and a determination to never trust a smile like that again. And now that smile was here, in this building, walking toward the man who had left beetle notes on a swing set and crouched down to ask a 3-year-old about mango juice. Tiana pushed her cart around the corner, kept her head down, kept her face very, very still. She had survived Soo-yeon Choi once. She was not sure she could do it again. Not here. Not like this. He called her into the office on a Wednesday. No warning. Just a message relayed through her supervisor. 3 words. No explanation. Mr. Lee. Now. West Wing. Tiana knocked twice and pushed the door open. Do-hyun was standing at his desk. Not sitting, standing. Like he'd been waiting and couldn't quite settle. There was a folder open in front of him, and he didn't look up immediately, which gave her exactly 3 seconds to remind herself to breathe. Then he looked up. TL Systems. That was yours. Not a question. Tiana's whole body went still. TL Systems. The startup she hadn't said out loud in 2 years. The one that had her initials in the name because she had been 26 and hopeful and stupid enough to believe that mattered. I don't know what you. The Adaptive Interface Patent. Filed under Choi Technologies now. Originally prototyped by A.T. Lawson. 26 years old at the time. Graduated top of her cohort at KIST. 2 research citations before she was even out of school. He slid the folder toward her. She didn't touch it. Inside, she could see from where she stood, was her own face. A conference photo from 4 years ago. She was smiling in it. She remembered that day. She had thought everything was beginning. Why do you have that? It came out flat. Not a question either. Because Soo-yeon Choi is sitting in my reception room proposing a merger, he said, and I make it a habit to understand exactly what I'm being offered before I agree to anything. Silence. Long enough that Tiana could hear her own heartbeat. The architecture in that patent, he continued, quieter now, is not Choi's work. I've read enough of her proposals to know the difference. Whoever built TL systems understood the problem from the inside. Choi understands how to take credit. Those are not the same skill. Tiana looked at him. Really looked. For the first time since the night she found Ava on his chest. Past the suit and the silence and the reputation that made grown men rearrange their schedules. He was watching her the way people watch things they found genuinely rare. Not with pity. Not with curiosity. With something that felt uncomfortably close to respect. It was the most dangerous thing anyone had made her feel in years. "I'm the cleaner," she said, carefully, like it was armor. Do-hyun closed the folder. "No," he said simply. "You're not. You never were. And I think you already know that." Her supervisor handed her the tray like it was nothing. Green tea. 2 cups. Petit fours arranged in a perfect line. A folded linen napkin that probably cost more than Tiana's bus pass. West sitting room. The Choi guest and Mr. Lee. "Knock once, don't linger." Tiana looked at the tray, picked it up. She had survived worse. She had survived losing everything. She could survive carrying tea. She knocked once, pushed the door open, kept her eyes on the tray the way she'd learned to keep them on the floor, forward, neutral, nowhere near anyone's face. The sitting room was all pale gold and tall windows. Soo-yeon was on the sofa in another immaculate outfit, one leg crossed over the other, talking in that soft, unhurried way she had. The voice she used when she wanted men to feel like the conversation was their idea. Do-hyun was in the chair across from her, not leaning in, not smiling, watching her the way he watched most things, like he was cataloging information and had already drawn several conclusions. Tiana set the tray on the table, poured the first cup. Soo-yeon kept talking, something about synergy, about the merger, about how well their families aligned. And Tiana kept her face very still and poured the second cup and did not look up and did not breathe wrong and did not allow herself to feel a single thing. Then Soo-yeon paused. The particular pause of someone who has just noticed something beneath them. You. Quiet. Almost pleasant. Like bumping into an old acquaintance at a market. Tiana straightened. Met her eyes. Just once. Just briefly. There it was. The flicker. Recognition sliding into something colder, faster. The calculation Soo-yeon always did. The one that asked, "Does this cost me anything?" And then the answer arriving just as quickly. "No? She's no one. She works here." Soo-yeon smiled and turned back to Do-hyun. Small world. That was all. 3 years of Tiana's life. 2 years of rebuilding. 1 daughter born into the wreckage of everything that woman had taken. Small world. Tiana picked up the tray, turned toward the door, kept her spine straight and her steps even and her face completely, perfectly still. She made it all the way to the corridor before her hands started shaking. She stood there a moment, back against the wall, eyes up, jaw tight. Then she heard Do-hyun's voice from inside the room, low, unhurried, the way it always was, saying, "Tell me more about the patent portfolio." And something in his tone made her stop shaking. He already knew. He had known the whole time. He was just making her show him who she was. The dinner was not supposed to happen like this. 12 people around a table that probably had a name. Crystal glasses. Candles. The kind of silence between courses that costs money to manufacture. Soo-yeon at Do-hyun's right, in deep red this time, saying the right things to the right people in exactly the right order. Tiana was in the kitchen. Ava was supposed to be asleep in the small side room off the staff corridor, door closed, blanket up, bunny tucked under one arm. Supposed to be. Tiana heard it before she saw it. A soft, determined patter of footsteps. Then the kitchen door swinging open. Then Ava, hair loose, red dress on again because she refused to sleep in anything else, marching through with a piece of paper clutched in both hands and an expression of absolute purpose. "I have my speech." Tiana moved fast. Not fast enough. By the time she made it to the dining room doorway, Ava was already inside. Already standing at the head of the table between Do-hyun's chair and the nearest candelabra, paper unfolded, looking out at 12 frozen adults like she had been expecting a slightly larger audience. The room was completely silent. Soo-yeon's smile had gone very tight at the corners. Ava cleared her throat. She actually cleared her throat, like she had seen someone do it once and filed it away for exactly this moment. "Hello, my name is Ava. I am free. I am 3. This is my drawing. That is my mama. That is me. That is my new papa. He fixes swings and he knows about beetles and he let me sleep on him and he didn't even be mad about the juice. The end. Thank you for coming to my speech. She held the drawing up. 3 figures in crayon. One tall, one with a big puff of hair, one very small in a red dress, positioned firmly in the middle, holding both their hands. Nobody moved. Tiana stood in the doorway with her hand over her mouth. Again, always, in this building, and watched Do-hyun look at that drawing for a long, unhurried moment. Then he looked up, not at Soo-hyun, not at his board members, at Tiana, like she was the only person in the room who mattered, like he had already made every decision he needed to make and was simply waiting for her to catch up. Soo-hyun said something sharp and low. Do-hyun didn't look at her. He just reached out, took the drawing from Ava, and set it down in front of him, like it belonged there. Nobody had moved. The drawing was still in front of Do-hyun. Ava had been quietly collected by one of the kitchen staff. No fuss, no tears. She went willingly, having delivered her speech and considered her work complete. But the room hadn't recovered. Soo-hyun was the first to find her voice. She laughed, soft, controlled, the kind of laugh designed to make everyone else feel like they'd overreacted. Children are so unpredictable. Shall we get back to the patent? Do-hyun said it quietly. He hadn't raised his voice once all evening. He didn't need to. The adaptive interface patent your family filed under Choi Technologies in 2021. The one your current merger proposal is built on. The one that is, according to the original development records, the prototype timestamps, and 2 independent technical assessments I commissioned last week, not yours. The table went very still. Soo-hyun's smile didn't move, but something behind her eyes did. Fast. Recalculating. Do-hyun, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The original architect filed under TL Systems. The work was completed before your family's involvement. The transfer of ownership was executed through a clause buried in a partnership agreement. A clause the original founder was 26 years old and unrepresented when she signed. He reached inside his jacket, set a folder on the table. Not the folder from his desk. A different one. Thicker. The kind that had clearly been prepared with considerable patience over considerable time. I've shared copies with everyone present. I've also shared them with the Intellectual Property Board, 3 members of which are joining us by call-in. He glanced at his watch. For minutes. Soo-hyun stood up. She looked across the table, past the board members, past the lawyers, past everything, and found Tiana in the doorway. Still there. Still holding the edge of the frame. Still keeping her face very still. For one long moment, they just looked at each other. Then Soo-hyun picked up her bag, said something brief and brittle to her assistant, and walked out of the room with the same unhurried click of heels she'd arrived with. Like it was her choice. Like she was leaving on her own terms. Like that was the last thing she had left. The room exhaled. Do-hyun didn't watch her go. He was already looking at Tiana. Steady. Certain. The way he looked at things he had already decided. Tiana's hands were shaking again. This time she didn't hide them. 3 years. 1 folder. For minutes. And just like that, she wasn't invisible anymore. 3 days after the dinner, the estate was quiet again. No lawyers. No assistants. No click of Soo-hyun's heels in the marble corridors. Just morning light coming through the east garden gate and Ava on the swing, going as high as her legs could push her, sneakers blinking against the pale sky. Do-hyun was standing at the garden wall. He had a coffee. He wasn't doing anything with it. Just standing there watching Ava swing like a man who had nowhere else to be and had only recently discovered what that felt like. Tiana was on the bench. Not pushing. Just present. Letting herself exist in the space without apologizing for it, which was new and fragile, and something she was trying to practice. Ava dragged her feet to stop. Looked at Do-hyun. We should get a fish. He considered this seriously. A fish. A family fish. For the house. So it feels like a family lives here. Tiana closed her eyes briefly. What kind of fish? Do-hyun asked. Ava thought about it with her whole face. An orange one. With a white stripe. And it needs a friend because fish get lonely. So 2 fish. That's my offer. Your offer. Yes. Do we have a deal? He looked at Tiana over Ava's head. Something in his expression, careful, quiet, the closest thing to nervous she had ever seen on him, made her stomach turn over completely. That depends, he said, still looking at Tiana, on whether your mother is staying. Ava spun to face Tiana immediately, fully, with the absolute focus of a child who has identified the one variable standing between her and 2 fish. Mama. We're staying. Ava. Mama. Tiana looked at her daughter. At the sneakers still blinking. At the swing Do-hyun had cleaned with his own hands before he had any reason to. At the man standing at the garden wall holding a coffee he'd forgotten to drink. Watching her with the patience of someone who had already waited a long time and was prepared to wait longer. She thought about the uniform. The invisible version of herself she'd worn like a second skin for 2 years. The woman who kept her face still and her hands busy and never once let it show. She was so tired of not letting it show. She stood up, crossed the garden, stopped in front of him close enough that she had to look up, and he had to look down, and there was nowhere left to hide. We're staying, she said, quietly, like it was simple, like it had always been simple. Do-hyun's hand found hers. Didn't grip, didn't rush, just held on, the same way he had held Ava that first night. Like his body had decided before the rest of him caught up. Behind them, Ava pumped her fist. We're getting the fish. We're getting the fish. And for the first time in a very long time, Tiana laughed. Really laughed. Like a woman who had finally found solid ground. And that, right there, is where Tiana Lawson stopped surviving and started living. One bench. One missing toddler. One billionaire who didn't know what hit him until a 3-year-old in a red dress climbed onto his chest and rearranged his entire life. Nobody saw it coming, least of all him. If this story made you feel something, if you held your breath during the sitting room, if Ava's speech broke you a little, if you smiled at the fish, then you already know this is the kind of story worth sharing. We're staying. 2 words. Everything. Don't let the next person miss that moment. Hit that like so this story finds the people who need it. Subscribe so you never miss a chapter, because Tiana and Ava are just getting started, and what comes next? You do not want to find out from someone else's comment section. And share this with the one person in your life who believes in quiet strength, second chances, and toddlers who negotiate in fish. You know exactly who that is. Like this story. Subscribe for more. Share with someone. See you in the next one. Ava would want you to. She's very persuasive.